Tonight on the Daily Debrief, a California cop killed in the line of duty.
And his dream was taken from him.
An arrest as the local sheriff pops off about sanctuary cities.
Law enforcement should be able to turn people over to ICE.
Plus, an appeal in the case of the Boston Marathon bomber. And is an accused Russian troll farm trolling Robert Mueller through court papers. Also, the case is headed to trial after the new year. That's tonight on the Daily Debrief for Friday, December 28th. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Debrief. We are following breaking news out of California this afternoon, where police have announced 3 arrests after an officer was killed in the line of duty. Newman, California Police Corporal Singh died after pulling over a suspected drunk driver. Authorities say the suspect opened fire on Corporal Singh and killed him. Singh, himself an immigrant, leaves behind a wife and a 5-month-old child. The accused gunman is 32-year-old Gustavo Perez Arriaga. Also under arrest are 2 other men said to have lied to police about Arriaga's whereabouts. Police say Arriaga is an undocumented immigrant who was trying to flee back to Mexico. They caught him in time. Authorities say he came here a couple of years ago, had a couple of drunk driving arrests, and remained in the United States doing farm labor. The sheriff who led the investigation spoke harshly against sanctuary city laws, which he says led to the officer's death.
I'm not here to talk about the President of the United States, but I will repeat what I've said before. Border security goes hand in hand with national security, goes hand in hand with public safety, goes hand in hand with the safety of our community. We, law enforcement, need to be able, unrestricted, without political interference, we need to be able to protect our communities. We have a strong relationship in Stanislaus County with a variety of community stakeholders. We're not here to enforce federal immigration law. That's not our job. But law enforcement should be able to turn people over to ICE who are committing crimes, who are gang members, who victimize and exploit others. And despite my position on legislation that does not protect our communities or promote trust, I still have to protect the suspect's right to a fair trial and to due process. So we're not going to violate that.
There are people that have said that this case is being politicized.
Of course it's being politicized. The last thing in the world I want to do is politicize the death of Officer Singh. But let's go back to Ron. An immigrant. Immigrated here lawfully and legally to pursue his American dream. He achieved that goal. And his dream was taken from him. No, we shouldn't politicize it, but we have to have a conversation about restrictive legislation that puts our communities at risk. I'm here to protect the people of Stanislaus County, regardless of who they are.
Those sobs you heard were from the slain officer's family who was present. Joining me tonight on the Daily Debrief is Jesse Weber, who is a fellow host here on the Law&Crime Network and also an attorney. So, Jesse, there's national attention on this case. The president has been tweeting about it. The sheriff was blunt about the impact of these sanctuary city laws. He said that this suspect had a couple of drunk drivings. If there was not a sanctuary city law in place, this suspect would have been deported and would not have been in a position to pull the trigger and kill this officer.
Look, you don't want to politicize this situation, but how could you not? The fact remains, if Arriaga, he wasn't supposed to be in this country, and Officer Singh would still be here. That's just the facts, and whichever way you side about federal immigration law, that's just the way it coincides. The big story that I saw was just the efforts of law enforcement in this manhunt to ultimately apprehend this individual. For me, it was very interesting to see that he was fleeing to Mexico, because there was a strong possibility that if he got there, we would never have found out who ultimately did this to this officer. And even despite the extradition laws between U.S. and Mexico, how would we be able to tie him to that? What I thought was poetic justice was the fact that he was arrested with the handcuffs of Officer Singh.
Yeah, the officers who were on the scene had the slain officer's handcuffs. They used them. You know, look, the sheriff here was careful not to give away too many details, saying, look, I want a fair prosecution of this guy. That due process standard applies to the government regardless of who the defendant is here. So even though he's not a citizen, he gets a good degree of due process rights here.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that why this country really is a beacon and everybody else tries to follow that ideal? And there is a back and forth about what are the rights of undocumented illegal immigrants. That becomes a big question. And here, this is just going to expand the conversation. And you know, as horrible as this event is, for anybody who is an advocate for anti-sanctuary cities, this is just ammunition for that.
Exactly. We expect the debate to continue. Jesse Weber will check in with you again in just a moment. A different foreign national accused of trying to poison his college roommate apparently tried to flee the country as well. Yukai Yang is accused of intimidating a black roommate with racist graffiti and then trying to poison that roommate with toxic metals. Authorities say Yang's family posted bail with hopes that immigration and customs enforcement officers would then deport Yang back to China without facing charges related to the roommate. That obviously did not work, but there's more to the story. Yang is also under investigation for a similar attack now against another student. That investigation, authorities there say, is in its early stages. The Boston Marathon bomber wants his conviction overturned because the judge refused to move the case out of Boston. Lawyers for Zohar Tsarnaev said the city was still traumatized from the attack. Therefore, they argued, a Boston area jury was incapable of impartially deciding the case. The lawyers also say 2 jurors made false claims during jury selection. Those arguments are just part of an 1,100-page court filing. Tsarnaev is on death row after a 2015 connection. 3 died and 260 were hurt in the 2013 bombing. A judge has made a child custody decision in the case of a Colorado fiancé missing since Thanksgiving and feared dead. The child's father, Patrick Frazee, is charged with solicitation of murder over the presumed death of mother Kelsey Barrett. Authorities remain tight-lipped over what they think happened to Barrett, but they are saying they believe she was killed in her home. A family law judge has ordered the couple's 1-year-old child to the custody of Kelsey Barrett's parents. The recent passage of a federal criminal justice reform bill has affected a famous defendant. Annette Bongiorno, a secretary for Bernie Madoff, almost immediately petitioned a federal judge for an early end to her prison sentence. Bongiorno noted in the request that the so-called First Step Act allows elderly prisoners who served 2/3 of their sentence to become eligible for direct release to home confinement. Bongiorno, now 70, has served 4 of a 6-year sentence. Madoff himself is now 80. He remains serving a 150-year sentence on what prosecutors estimated was a $65 billion Ponzi scheme. Michael Cohen is denying reports which suggest his phone might have been a lot closer to Russia than Cohen has previously claimed. The McClatchy newspapers reported yesterday that a cell phone traced to Cohen pinged off towers in Prague in the Czech Republic in the summer of 2016. Other sources claim Cohen may have been there to secretly meet with Russian officials. McClatchy cited 4 unnamed but independent people as sources for this information. But Cohen himself on Twitter last night denied being anywhere near Prague or anywhere in the Czech Republic at any time in his life. Cohen is preparing to serve a federal prison sentence after pleading guilty to campaign finance crimes, tax fraud, and bank fraud. A court document filed this week in the case of a suspected Russian troll farm has caused quite the stir. The document accuses special counsel Robert Mueller of a series of bizarre accusations. One of them is that Mueller collected a naked selfie, and the document questions whether the nature of the collection threatens national security. Another accusation is that Mueller made up a crime that has never been prosecuted before in the history of the United States. Still another accusation in this document is that Mueller seeks to make up secret procedures for communicating with the judge in the case without the other party being present. A full story on this document is on lawandcrime.com. Joining me tonight here on the Daily Debrief is once again attorney and host Jesse Weber. So Jesse, let's back this thing up a little bit. The case is about Concord Management. Who are they? Why is Mueller after them?
So they're one of several Russian companies and individuals that were indicted for allegedly interfering with the 2016 presidential election in an effort to ultimately help President Trump win. Concord is interesting because it's alleged that they funded that plot to interfere with the election. It's also alleged by prosecutors that Concord is controlled by a business figure with close ties to President Putin. So there's very interesting connections here, and of course they have pled not guilty to the charges.
Yeah, this complaint about Mueller seeking to communicate with the judge without Concord Management present, it's not exactly unique. I mean, this happens from time to time.
You're talking, of course, about ex parte communications. Generally, they are deemed inappropriate. Anytime there's a communication about a case, you want both sides there. But it's not unusual. I mean, let's talk about it when you want a restraining order. The other side is not there. It's typical that it's one party petitioning a court to get something done. Here, you also see it happen a lot when you have privileged or confidential information, national security interests. If the other side had access to that, doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of relaying that information? The counter-argument here, and what was interesting in their brief, was Robert Mueller never said that any of this information was classified, but now he can withhold it. So they make an interesting argument in their brief, and that's not the only interesting thing.
Exactly. I mean, I happen to bring my copy of it here because I've enjoyed reading it multiple times here. So, you know, other phrases in this thing, what the heck? I can't remember seeing that in a federal court document before. Nifty. They're accusing Mueller of just throwing a dart in order to pick cases to support his argument. The question is this document its own little troll job to Robert Mueller?
A little bit. I mean, calling it a made-up case, I don't think I've ever seen it. Look, there's interesting you're allowed to use flexible language one way or another, but what they're basically saying is he didn't cite substantial case law to back up his arguments. And there's maybe an argument there. I'm not that familiar with those cases that Mueller cited, but maybe they have an argument there. They dressed it up a little to make it entertaining for the court and maybe the public at large. But if they have an argument there that he is citing false case law for the belief that he can withhold this information, then their argument is pretty strong.
Homework assignment, Jesse Weber. Take it home, look through the cases, and tell me who wins.
Yes, Professor.
I'll look back for that at
Professor
the
Keller.
end of the broadcast. All right, a Chicago attorney under arrest after authorities say he threw his wife's 2 chihuahuas off their balcony. 51-year-old Jared Jeske is said to have killed one of the animals. The other one is missing. Jeske's wife called 911 after a Christmas Eve argument. She said he slapped her twice, but later she recanted that accusation. But then she said that this defendant went after the dogs and accused her of loving them more than she loved him. Surveillance camera footage apparently backs up that claim about the dogs. Jeske is charged now with aggravated cruelty to animals. R&B singer Chris Brown facing charges that he illegally owned a pet monkey. The charges apparently stem from an online photo which shows Brown's daughter holding the animal. Unnamed sources have told TMZ that Brown denies the accusations in part because he claims a relative owns the monkey. Those sources also say the photo wasn't even taken in California, where police are after Brown. Still, California authorities reportedly have custody of the animal. Brown faces 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine if he is convicted. Utah's tough new drunk driving law is set to kick in the day before New Year's Eve. Most states set the limit at a blood alcohol level of 0.08, but Utah's new law sets the limit for drunk driving at 0.05. That's 2 or 3 drinks for the average man and only 1 or 2 drinks for most women. The National Transportation Safety Board has been asking states to lower their DUI limits to 0.05 since 2013, but Utah is the first state to actually go through with it. A Pennsylvania prosecutor is crediting a popular Christmas song with ending a Christmas Day standoff. They say 34-year-old Nathaniel Lewis is in the process of breaking up with his wife. He began acting erratically on Christmas night. When they went to check on him, he started firing a gun. Bullets struck a police vehicle, another car, and a nearby home. It ended when a SWAT team negotiator started singing White Christmas. Lewis is charged with attempted homicide, aggravated assault, and other crimes. The prosecutor, get this, brought cookies to the members of the SWAT team to thank them for their work. Still ahead tonight on the Daily Debrief, a look ahead to the cases we'll be covering with the start of the new year, including the retrial for a Florida woman accused of murdering her boyfriend after a breakup. That's after the break here on the Daily Debrief. back to the debrief, folks. Jesse Weber along with myself as we move along to look at other cases we're planning to cover when courthouses reopen after the start of the new year. Jeremiah Monell of New Jersey is accused of stabbing his wife to death and leading police on a manhunt after the stabbing. Victim Tara O'Shea Watson died in December 2016. If convicted on charges, Jeremiah Monell faces life without parole. He rejected a 30-year plea deal. Opening statements in this case are scheduled right after the new year on January 3rd. The trial of a Michigan Uber driver accused of killing 4 people is scheduled to begin with the new year. Jason Dalton, seen here, reportedly told authorities a mobile phone app took over his mind and forced him to commit the crimes. The problem for prosecutors is that the Court of Appeals threw out most of Dalton's statements. Dalton demanded an attorney during police interrogation and then said he wished to remain silent. However, police continued to question him for more than 3 hours in violation of the Constitution. Prosecutors are moving forward with the case regardless of the loss of evidence. The retrial of a Florida woman is also scheduled to begin the second week of January. The first case against Melanie Eam ended with a split jury. 4 jurors wanted to convict her of second-degree murder. 2 others wanted to convict her of manslaughter. Remember, Florida routinely uses 6-person juries rather than the standard of 12 in other states. Eam is accused of stabbing her boyfriend to death after he tried to break up with her. Authorities say she then fled to Maryland. The defense said another man in the house committed the stabbing, moved the murder weapon, and washed up in order to conceal his involvement. Those are some of the cases we're covering with the start of the new year here on the Law and Crime Network. Plus, there are others, including the McStay family murder case in California in 2019.
I'm Anthony Velez, and here are the top upcoming trials of 2019. The quadruple homicide trial of Charles Chase Merritt, the man accused of fatally beating a business associate, his wife, and their 2 preschool children, is set to begin on January 7, 2019. The 61-year-old suspect is facing charges in connection to the disappearance of business associate Joseph McStay, his wife, Summer, and their young sons, 4-year-old Gianni and 3-year-old Joey Jr., from their home in Fallbrook in 2010. The family's remains were discovered in the Mojave Desert in 2013, and Merritt was arrested in 2014. Merritt represented himself for a short period, but later sought legal assistance. Merritt now faces the death penalty if convicted. The trial of the retired Tampa police captain who claims he fatally shot another man in self-defense during a dispute at a movie theater is scheduled to begin on February 25, 2019. 75-year-old Curtis Reeves reportedly fatally shot Chad Olson inside the Cobb Grove 16 after the 2 men argued over Olson's use of a cell phone during previews. Olson allegedly approached Reeves and threw a bag of popcorn at him before Reeves drew his gun and fatally shot Olson. Reeves tried to claim a stand your ground defense, but a judge rejected the defense argument, and that decision was upheld on appeal. His defense team will reportedly argue self-defense at trial. Reeves is now facing a second-degree murder charge. The trial of the Georgia man accused of killing an 11th grade history teacher in Ocilla is set to begin in April 2019. The defendant, Ryan Duke, was arrested in 2017 in connection with Tara Grinstead's 2005 disappearance and death. Duke and another man, Bo Dukes, reportedly told friends at a party a month after Grinstead's disappearance that they killed Grinstead and burned her body. Duke now faces multiple charges, including felony murder. Bo Dukes faces charges of concealing a death, tampering with evidence, and hindering the apprehension or punishment of a criminal. A man accused of killing his pregnant ex-girlfriend and a police officer who tried to arrest him in Florida will stand trial in May. Marquis Floyd is accused of fatally shooting his ex-girlfriend, Sade Dixon, on December 10, 2016, before shooting Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton when she tried to arrest him in January 2017. Lloyd reportedly lost the use of one of his eyes while being apprehended by authorities, claiming he suffered an unprovoked police attack. Lloyd now faces the death penalty. The trial of Pan Hupp, the woman accused of killing a mentally disabled man in Missouri to cover up another murder in 2011, is set to begin in June. Prosecutors claim Hupp fatally shot 33-year-old Louis Gumpenberger to divert attention for the murder of Betsy Faria, whose husband, Russ Faria, she framed for the killing in 2011. Hupp was the star witness in Faria's first murder trial, resulting in a guilty verdict. Faria was later acquitted during a second trial. Hupp now faces a charge of first-degree murder for Gumpenberger's killing. The two suspects, accused of killing a Florida State law professor in a murder-for-hire plot in 2014, will face a jury in June 2019. The suspects, Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine Magbanua, reportedly hired a hitman, Luis Rivera, who allegedly drove from Miami to Tallahassee and fatally shot Dan Markle. Rivera took a plea deal to a lesser charge of second-degree murder in exchange for his testimony against Garcia and Magbanua. Investigators believe the suspects were hired by Markle's ex-wife's family to kill Markle over a custody dispute, but no family members have been charged. The suspects now face charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder. The ex-wife of NBA star Lorenzo Wright is set to stand trial for his murder in November 2019. Shira Wright and her cousin, Billy Turner, are accused of conspiring to kill Wright in 2010 when Wright's body was found with multiple gunshot wounds in Tennessee. The pair allegedly had a co-conspirator, Wright's cousin, convicted killer Jimmy Martin, who allegedly assisted with the cleanup of the crime scene. Martin turned state's witness, leading investigators to the murder weapon, which was tossed in a lake in Walnut, Michigan. Wright now faces a charge of first-degree murder, but won't face the death penalty if convicted. I'm Anthony Velez for Law and Crime, and those were the top upcoming trials of 2019.
We have a lot on the docket in 2019, and here to discuss a couple of these cases one last time is Jesse Weber. So, Jesse, Jeremiah Monell, that's the first one out of the gate in 2019. This is that New Jersey case. The jury was selected before the holidays. They're basically waiting for opening statements to pick up after the first of the year. Let's hope they're not Googling the case.
Yeah, that maybe wasn't a great scheduling idea. Look, we've covered so many cases here where there becomes issues of the jury Googling information, posting things on social media. The question is, if they do that, how much is it going to influence their decision? You know, we've even seen cases before where they've had some sort of contact and they're still allowed on the jury, which is pretty startling. I like to cover these cases here in New Jersey because it's so close to home, and we always get those kinds of cases close, and it's really just a really incredible one that we're going to be covering in 2019.
Yeah, that's right out of the gate. I think the most interesting one legally is this Jason Dalton case out of Michigan, the Uber driver. He is interrogated. He demands his attorney. He says he wants to remain silent, and they keep asking him questions. This is the most basic legal concept that everybody learns within 10 seconds in criminal procedure. You invoke counsel, the police have to stop.
You're telling me that it's abnormal? People break the law and make mistakes?
Well, okay,
listen, here's the thing. I think that's going to be a real big problem for them. But the bigger thing of that is, has your phone not told you to commit crimes anytime or apps? Because that's the bigger thing.
My phone's in the other room. I'm going to have to check yours and see what it's telling me. But I'm going to be really curious to see how prosecutors try this case without a lot of the statements.
It's really tough because they were hoping on that. They were banking on that. They're just going to have to move on to that physical evidence and see one way or another witness statements, because if you don't have his own words, it's a problem.
I can't wait to read that Court of Appeal decision. Jesse Weber, thanks a lot for your first appearance on The Debrief.
Hopefully it's not my last. Thanks again.
You can come back anytime. Of course, that's all the time we have for the Daily Debrief. A reminder that we will be back with more live coverage after the first of the year. So Happy New Year, everyone. We will see you then.